Welcome to the 20th anniversary of Anti-Corruption Conference from United Nations. This is a great event, especially to tackle and to stop corruption from United Nations, and this is happening in the World Congress Center at Georgia, Atlanta. We are really just very excited, and we can't wait to stop any kind of corruptions that's happening around the world. UNODC, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, has arranged this conference at Georgia World Congress Center to unite against corruptions, to stop any kind of corruptions around the world. UNODC, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, has organized this conference at Georgia World Congress Center to stop any kind of corruptions, to tackle corruptions around the world. And this is a prime time where there's so much happening around the world. So let's stand, my brothers and sisters, all together with unity and compassion and peace to stop and work against corruptions. This is a call to action from business to government to stand against corruptions. United Nations Conventions Against Corruption, and this is the 20th anniversary. Welcome to the 20th anniversary of United Nations Conventions Against Corruption at Atlanta, Georgia World Congress Center. This is a call to action for all the government and business entities around the world to understand corruption, to tackle corruption, to stop corruption in order to bring justice and peace on this planet Earth. The 20th anniversary of corruptions. It's a great initiation from United Nations at Georgia World Congress Center in order to stop and work against corruptions. This is a stepping tool to initiate and to understand, to stop corruptions in order to build a global and economical sustainable community around the world. Welcome to the United Nations Conventions Against Corruption. This is the 20th anniversary, and it's happening at Georgia World Congress Center. This is the time to raise our voice against corruptions. This is the time to take actions to any kind of corruptions around the world. For all the business and government organizations, all the global leaders, let's start from today, from now on, to take actions to tackle corruptions in order to bring justice, peace on this planet Earth, in order to bring a global, peaceful economy on this planet Earth. UNODC, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, uniting the world against corruption, and the time is right now to take actions immediately to stop any kind of injustice and corruptions around the world. UNODC, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, countering corruptions to reduce gender inequalities. Please tell us about your best anti-corruption practices and your vision for 20 years. Welcome to the World Anti-Corruption Conventions at Atlanta, Georgia World Congress Center. And this is the 20th anniversary, and this is the time to understand corruption and to unite against corruption. Together for accountability and integrity, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, uniting the world against corruption at Atlanta, Georgia World Congress Center. United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, countering corruptions against gender inequalities with integrity and accountability. We definitely will to face any kind of discriminations and inequalities against women. United Nations Conventions Against Corruption, with integrity and accountability. We need to face and raise our voice towards any kind of injustice and corruption. For all the world organizations, business, and government, this is the time right now to take actions and make this planet Earth a better place with peace and harmony.
Good morning. All right, that sounds like a good morning. I'm Lisa Benjamin. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the City of Atlanta. And I'm here to welcome you to our wonderful city. Welcome to Atlanta. Welcome to the state of Georgia. We are so excited to host this 10th session of the Conference of State Parties to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. On behalf of our Mayor, Andre Dickens, I welcome you to our great city. A special thank you to the over 190 countries and delegations that are coming to you today, all of you world leaders and representatives from across the globe. We are honored that Atlanta has been chosen, and this is our first time hosting this wonderful event. Atlanta is a city of peace. Here you will find a perfect place to enjoy yourself, to meet people of different cultures. We are an international city, and we are the cradle of the civil rights movement. The safety of our world is paramount, and this conference is part of our shared commitment to human rights, public health, and the safety of our communities across the globe.
Not just for the United States, but for all 190 states parties to this convention. As President Biden has said, it's a cancer in the body of societies. Corruption exacerbates inequality and political polarization. Corruption undermines our responses to crises, from pandemics to natural disasters. Every dollar stolen is a dollar that we cannot invest in our schools or our hospitals, in our businesses or our public pensions. Corruption erodes citizens' faith in government and their trust in one another, polarizing our politics, dividing our communities, exacerbating crime and conflict. And corruption can be weaponized by countries and actors looking to do harm to our security, to our economies, to our political system. And every one of these harms hits underserved and marginalized populations the hardest. Yet for every one of these negative consequences, the flip side is also true. Creating more transparent, accountable governance is one of the most powerful ways that we can build more inclusive opportunity, greater security, better public services, more respect for human rights, and more ways for citizens to seek when those rights are abused. In some, it's crucial to building the societies that people in all of our communities and countries want and deserve. These are all reasons President Biden issued the first ever U.S. strategy on countering corruption in 2021, setting out a whole-of-government approach that has guided our efforts. One of the strategy's pillars is strengthening the international anti-corruption architecture, of which the UN Convention and this conference is a key part. A few months ago, the United States put out a comprehensive report on how we're doing on meeting our commitments, because holding ourselves accountable is an important way to model the transparency that we want to foster, and to highlight challenges where we can use some help. That's the spirit we bring to hosting this conference. 2 decades since the adoption of this convention, all states parties, and indeed everyone here who works on promoting good governance, has an opportunity and a responsibility to take a candid look at where we've made progress and where we've come up short. We have to recommit ourselves to turning the pledges we made into reality. In those areas where we have work to do, whether that's strengthening asset recovery efforts to return stolen resources to their rightful owners, or increasing financial transparency in high-risk sectors like real estate, or eliminating the safe havens that corrupt actors use to hide their illicit profits, we must harness the experience, the knowledge, and the ingenuity of the widest range of partners if we're going to find solutions. Indeed, if we've learned anything from our recent efforts, it's that no institutional organization, no government or group of governments can effectively combat corruption alone. That means we need to break down the silos between law enforcement, prosecutors, public health officials, development practitioners, and other officials whose efforts are weakened by corruption. We need to reach across borders, sharing what works in fighting impunity, just as corrupt actors are constantly taking pages from one another's playbooks. And we need to reach outside government, to team up with civil society, the private sector, and directly with citizens, all of whom have a profound stake in this fight and important tools and perspectives to bring to bear. That's the story of our proud host city, Atlanta, and I'd like to thank Mayor Dickens for welcoming us here. Atlanta is renowned for being the birthplace of many civil rights trailblazers, including Dr. Martin Luther King, Dorothy Bolden. One of the shared qualities that made these individuals such transformative leaders was their ability to make people, ordinary citizens, believe that they were capable of ending entrenched injustices that many had endured for their entire lives. And they were able to rally diverse coalitions to their cause. Businesses, faith groups, students, unions. To break out of the cycle of impunity and hopelessness, we need the same kind of inclusive leadership. Such inclusive leadership was on full display yesterday when we hosted the first ever Anti-Corruption Civil Society Forum, which brought together anti-corruption and transparency advocates, journalists, human rights defenders, youth leaders, academics, and others, together with representatives from government from every region of the world. We hope that future hosts will make this forum a regular occurrence. And we urge every state party to bring the same approach to efforts to combat corruption. So, thank you for joining us. I wish you lively and productive discussions in the days ahead. And we look forward to learning from you and working with you. Thank you very much.
What they do every single day to unite the world against corruption. Last but definitely not least, can we give another round of applause to the Newton High School Marching Band? They sounded fantastic. It kind of brought to my mind the days when I was in high school and I was in a marching band. And I played the French horn. But there were a few of us in the marching band who only marched and carried our instruments. And I was one of those because I could barely get a sound out of that French horn. But I noticed that all of these young people were actively engaged in the performance, and they were really extraordinary. The sound was fantastic. They woke you all up just in time for my speech. I should have them follow me around every time I do a speech. On behalf of President Biden, it really is my privilege to welcome you to the 10th session of the Conference of the State Parties to the UN Convention Against Corruption. Here this week, we have delegations from every corner of the globe. We have an unprecedented number of anti-corruption experts from civil society and the private sector. It is a true testament to the importance and the urgency of our work. This week, we celebrate two moments in history. The 20th anniversary of the adoption of the UN Convention Against Corruption and the 75th anniversary of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. These two foundational documents are inextricably linked and mutually reinforcing. When we advance good governance, accountability, and transparency, we advance human rights, fundamental freedoms, and peace. But the opposite is also true. When we allow corruption to go unchecked, we create a culture of impunity that allows human rights violations to go unpunished. Corruption is a cancer that metastasizes, that weakens every pillar of society, that fuels extortion and discrimination, that subverts democracy and the rule of law, and denies people their rights and freedoms and their futures, that steals funds from essential government services and can even keep students from continuing their education, pursuing their ambitions and their dreams, particularly in developing countries where families are sometimes forced to bribe local officials to get their kids into school. We know corruption has the most dire consequences for the most vulnerable: women and children, persons with disabilities, the LGBTQI+ community, the poor and the underserved, the people who most need our help and support, but who often feel that no matter how hard they work, the system is rigged against them, who see democracy as ineffective, the justice system as inaccessible. And here's what is really, really dangerous. When leaders fail to take on corrupt actors and corrupt systems, they open the door to instability and to conflict. When you look at Transparency International's CPI index,
التي عقدت في حزيران يونيو 2021 وفي السنتين الماضيتين واصل المؤتمر عمله أيضا من خلال هيئاته الفرعية في أوقات صعبة واجهتها البشرية. وأود أيضا أن أعرب عن تقديري للفرصة التي أتيحت لي لخدمة المؤتمر وهيئاته الفرعية، وقد حظيت في سياق تنفيذ مهامي بدعم مكتب مقتدر ومتعاون للغاية مؤلف من نواب الرئيس ولا سيما سعادة السفير أفتاب أحمد كوخر من باكستان، وسعادة السيدة دومينيكا كرويس من بولندا، وكل من سعادة السيدة ماريا أندريا وسعادة السيد أنخيل إدموند أوريانا ميركادو والسيد خايمي تورسيوس أورميانو من هندوراس والسيد بيير بيرتل من بلجيكا مقرر المؤتمر. وحظيت أيضا بدعم أمانة تتمتع بالكفاءة وتتعامل باقتدار مع التحديات الجديدة والمختلفة. وأدعو المؤتمر الآن إلى مشاهدة فيديو يعرض التقدم المحرز ننتقل الآن إلى البند 1ب من جدول أعمالنا. وقبل أن نبدأ أعطي الآن الكلمة لأمينة المؤتمر لتقديم بعض المعلومات الإجرائية.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, dear delegates. I would like to inform delegations that in order to ask for the floor, you need to press the press to speak button on your microphone on the desks at your country seats. This does not apply to statements to be delivered under sub-item 1F, general discussion, since the floor under that item will be given based on the established list of speakers. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the United States for hosting this important meeting. For 2 decades, the Convention has been a guiding light in our efforts against corruption. While we have made significant strides, corruption remains a real threat around the globe. Corruption not only robs resources, it robs people of hope. Corruption undermines development. Corruption subverts social cohesion and exacerbates inequalities. Corruption fuels distrust in institutions. Today, the world must leverage the universal goals of the Convention to advance accountability, integrity, and transparency, to safeguard the rule of law and human rights, and restore trust in a world marred by conflict and violence, to rescue the Sustainable Development Goals and leave no one behind, to protect the environment and enable an effective response to the existential threat of climate change, and to put an end, once and for all, to impunity. I call on all parties to use this opportunity to strengthen international cooperation to prevent, detect, and prosecute corruption in partnership with civil society and the private sector. Together we can build resilient institutions, empower citizens, and build a future of justice and equality. Thank you.
UNODC, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Together, we can make it happen. With integrity and accountability, we can prevent the cancer, and that cancer is corruption. We all have the rights to live in this world with peace, harmony, and with justice. No more of this cancer. From today on, let's prevent the cancer, corruption. Zero corruption should be our slogan. 20th anniversary of United Nations Conventions Against Corruption. To live in a world with peace, harmony, equality, justice, transparency, integrity, and light. We all have the rights to live in this world, being a transparent citizen without any darkness, and in order to walk on the light with divine justice and equality. This is the perfect time to stand up and raise your voice against any kind of discrimination and corruption. This is our human rights. Welcome to the United Nations Conventions Against Corruption, where the mind is without fear, where the head is held high, where the knowledge is free, and where the world has not been broken into pieces, where the mind is without fear. That should be our slogan and mantra for United Nations Conventions Against Corruption at Atlanta, Georgia Congress Center. I'm so grateful and honored to be able to join the Private Sector Forum from United Nations Global Compact, and this is the UN Convention Against Conference at Atlanta World Congress Center. Always remember, where the mind is without fear, where the knowledge is free, and the world hasn't been fragmented into pieces by Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, that should be our slogan and mantra from today for all the leaders around the world. Together against corruption, the world of light and transparency. United Nations Conventions Against Corruption at Atlanta, Georgia Congress Center. Empowering the integrity leaders of tomorrow. Integrity, transparency, and accountability. These are the important goals and rules for leaders tomorrow.
Corruption and strengthen international cooperation. However, much work remains to be done to ensure that countries take firm steps to increase transparency and control over the role of money in politics, both regarding legal reforms, but also providing for effective enforcement. The Conference of State Parties has an important role to play in providing guidance to state parties on acceptable behavior and necessary regulations on political finance. In this session, we will dive on everyday people to specific examples of good.
This also
on sanctions as a very classic traditional deterrence approach. But we also know and have seen that it has not driven the outcome that we want. And here incentives can help because incentives will balance and will hopefully drive a potential change. So if the country is more and more used this. And then to your second question, for me it is important that sanctions really will be used reactively when something has happened and companies have identified misconduct, have made it transparent and have collaborated in order to address it. But I think we should infuse even more strategically use incentives. We should use them to encourage companies to invest in prevention, which means risk assessments. We should encourage them to educate their associates. When I say educate, I do not mean just a simple plain training, this is the law, no, explaining the why, because still corruption is perceived as a victimless crime. So the why, explain why, those are aspects. And last but not least, and probably this is the most important aspect from my point of view, is to help them establishing a corporate culture and ethical culture. And why?
A responsibility to foster this environment where business can thrive, but then ensuring also that the private sector does so in an ethical manner. And Carl has just alluded to that. So from your experience,
when you compare, there are many direct documents which do not mention culture. Except, for instance, one example, mentioned the US, but culture is so critical. And it's so difficult for companies to fully understand what is we had in the past. It was absolutely clear.
Is a great lesson for all of us to know how to be fearless, to know how to walk on the path of justice and light, and uniting everybody to fight against corruption. There'll be no more discrimination, no more inequality or injustice to any living and non-living creation underneath the sky and the heaven. This is our path to walk. United Nations Conventions Against Corruption at Georgia World Congress Center. To learn to hold your head high, to walk without any fear, and to implement justice, equality, peace, and harmony on this planet Earth. This should be our only path